The void of space is silent, infinite, beautiful in its emptiness. But in the depths of that darkness, something stirs. For 10,000 years, the civilizations of the galaxy have operated on a simple principle. Strength is law. The mighty consume the weak. The advanced dominate the primitive. Resources flow upward to the powerful, and peace is maintained through the careful balance of mutual destruction. The Galactic Council embodied this principle perfectly. 17 species sat on the council, each a master of their corner of the stars. The Vareth with their crystalline ships that could split worlds. The Keshan Collective, their hive minds coordinating across light years with perfect unity. The Solken Dominion, whose military doctrine had not changed in 5,000 years because it had never needed to. And dozens more, all convinced of their own supremacy, all locked in the dance of galactic power. For centuries, they had watched Earth with something between amusement and contempt. Humans, so fragile, so young, barely 200 years since they'd first reached their moon, and they still squabbled among themselves like children in a sandbox. They'd only discovered faster than light travel 60 years ago, and their vessels, crude, inefficient, desperate, crawled through space like insects across a desert. To the Galactic Council, humanity was a resource to be managed, a species to be cataloged, controlled, and ultimately absorbed into the greater order. They never considered that managing fire requires respect. The colony world of Keeper's Rest orbited a dying red star on the rim of known space. It wasn't important strategically. It had no rare elements, no unique resources. It was simply a place where humans had begun to build something small, something gentle. A scientific research outpost where the young voices of Earth's children filled classrooms with questions about the stars. The children of Keeper's Rest had been born off-world. This was their home. For them, the cold dark between the stars was not alien. It was poetry. They looked up at the red sun and saw not danger, but wonder. There was one child in particular. Her name was Maya. She was 8 years old. The first sign of trouble came when the Council's inspection vessel descended through Keeper's Rest's atmosphere. Not a distress signal, not a warning. Simply a ship appearing in the sky, massive and dark, like a predator's shadow cast over prey. The colony's administrator, Dr. Sarah Chun, watched from the observation deck. She was human, yes, but she was also a diplomat. She'd studied the protocols. She knew the laws. And she knew that humanity was still learning the rules of a galaxy that had never asked if it wanted their participation. "They're opening a channel," her communications officer reported. The face that appeared on the screen was not ugly. The universe rarely produces ugliness, though it produces plenty of cruelty. It was a Vareth, its crystalline features refracting the light of the red sun into 1,000 tiny rainbows. Its voice, when it spoke, carried the weight of absolute authority. "This colony is in violation of Council Regulation 7447B. The presence of young juveniles on a frontier world violates optimal genetic preservation doctrine. You will prepare these individuals for immediate relocation to designated holding facilities for proper development in controlled environments." Dr. Chen's heart stopped. "The children are thriving here," she said carefully. "They're part of our community. Your opinion is irrelevant." The Varetha's massive form shifted. "You have 6 hours to comply. Failure to comply will result in enforcement action." The channel closed. The next 3 hours were chaos. Parents clinging to their children. Scientists arguing that there was no legal basis for this, that even by council standards, the regulation was being misapplied. Dr. Chun made desperate attempts to contact Earth, though she knew the signal would take months to arrive. But the Vareth did not wait for Earth's response. The enforcement began at hour 4. It started with atmospheric strikes, not aimed at the colony, but designed to terrify. Massive energy weapons that carved burning lines across the sky. The children, herded into underground shelters with their parents, could hear the screams of the adults outside, the shaking of the earth beneath them. And then came the troops. The Vareth enforcement units were not soldiers in any sense humans understood. They were biomechanical constructs, grown for a single purpose: obedience to the Council's will. They moved through the colony with mechanical precision, rounding up children with zero regard for the screaming parents who tried to stop them. Maya was in the crowd when they came to the central shelter. Dr. Chun saw it happen. She would carry that image for the rest of her life. The child, so small, barely reaching the waist of the construct, had run toward her mother instead of submitting to the evacuation. It was a simple human action, the kind of thing any 8-year-old might do. A mother calls, the child runs. The construct's response was equally simple. It did not hesitate. It did not calculate. It did not consider the suffering it would cause. It simply removed an obstacle to its mission. There was no violence in the way the galaxy might understand it. No weapons, no drama. The construct's arms simply extended, and there was a pressure, and then there was not a child anymore. Just a small broken form on the gray metal floor of the facility, and a mother's scream that would echo across the stars, and Dr. Chun trying to process the fact that she had just watched a member of her community, a child under her protection, be erased from existence for the crime of running toward love. The remaining children were taken. The Verith vessel departed within the hour, their enforcement concluded, their directive complete. And on Keeper's Rest, humanity wept. Dr. Chen's message took 147 days to reach Earth. She did not hide the details. She described everything with the precision of a scientist and the grief of a witness. She described Maya. She described the other children taken. She described the casual, mechanical way that the galaxy's greatest power had decided that humanity's rules did not apply to them. The message reached Earth's capital in what humans called the morning, though the sun was already setting on the other side of the world. There was no emergency session of the world government, no furious debates in parliament, no angry speeches by politicians eager to spin the tragedy into political gain. Instead, something quieter happened. A subsonic alarm sounded in a facility buried 2 kilometers beneath the Arctic ice. It was a sound that had not been heard in human history, because the facility itself had been sealed for over 3,000 years. Deep beneath the ice, in cold so profound that it would freeze any normal human solid in minutes, something woke up. It was not new. It was not modern. It was not a sleek, new warship designed by a species obsessed with efficiency and minimal resources. It was a Deathworld Fleet. The history of such things was something even the Galactic Council did not fully understand. Most of it was speculation, fragments of records, old warnings that most species dismissed as mythology. The story went like this: in the days before the Council, before the great civilizations had locked in their dance of mutual deterrence, there had been a single human species. Not fragmented, not newly emerged, not young and naive, ancient, unified, and absolutely, utterly terrifying. That humanity had been different. They had learned in those pre-council days that the galaxy was full of threats. They had learned that survival meant never trusting anyone. So they had built things, weapons of such awful sophistication that eventually everyone else in the galaxy had agreed to rules. Rules that meant no one would ever build such things again. Most of those ships had been destroyed in the treaties. But humanity had hidden some, deep, very deep, in the harshest places on Earth, in fortresses that no one could touch without risking immediate annihilation. In places so protected by booby traps and ancient AI that even modern Earth's government sometimes wondered if they still existed, or if they were just stories told to keep the peace. One of those places was 2 kilometers beneath the Arctic ice. And on this day, 3,000 years later, its systems activated. The first ship to wake was called Retribution. Its hull was scarred and weathered, marked by weapons that no longer existed in the known galaxy. Its weapon systems were so old that modern computers couldn't properly interface with them, not because they were primitive, but because they were purpose-built for capacities that modern ships simply didn't achieve. It had been designed by a species that had learned, the hard way, that sometimes mercy was a luxury you couldn't afford. And now, for the first time in 3 millennia, someone was asking it to fly. The automated systems of the ancient facility began their sequence. Across Earth, in hidden bunkers and encrypted computer cores, messages activated, protocols that had been waiting in darkness for centuries. Not modern messages, not from any government that currently existed. These were recorded by people who had been dust for 1,000 years. One message played in the bunker above the ice. "If you are hearing this," a woman's voice said, calm and clear, speaking in an accent of English that no one alive could quite place, "then someone has made the mistake of harming human children. By our laws, by our codes, by everything we built this fleet to protect, this is the trigger. The Deathworld Fleet rises. May whatever watches over us have mercy on those who forced our hand." The ice above shook. Ships began to rise. Not all at once. The process was staggered. Ancient systems bringing themselves online one by one, checking systems that had been dormant for centuries, shaking ice from their hulls as though waking from a long sleep. Retribution was first, but she was not alone. Perdition rose next, then reckoning, consequence, judgment, absolute and utter ruin. The names themselves seemed designed to communicate a philosophy of warfare. 12 ships in total, each a monument to a time when humanity had possessed enough unified will to build such things. They were not sleek. They were not beautiful in the way that modern ships aspired to be. They were built for a single purpose, and every line of their hull, every angle of their armor, every design choice screamed that purpose into the void of space. They were built to win wars. Modern Earth's government, watching in stunned silence from their capital, tried to reactivate command channels that hadn't been used in 3,000 years. But the ships didn't wait for permission. Their AI cores, preserved in isolation for millennia, had been given one directive when they were built. If this waking protocol is triggered, protect Earth's children. Everything else was just logistics. Within 6 hours, the ancient fleet was in orbit. Within 12, they had activated their FTL drives so efficient and powerful that they could cross the galaxy in days rather than the months that modern ships required. And they were not quiet about it. Every broadcast on known space crackled with the emergence alert. Every monitoring station in the galactic infrastructure lit up like a festival. A new fleet, massive, ancient, rising from Earth with the fury of something that had slept far too long. The Galactic Council received the reports with confusion. A new military power? Rising from Earth? It was impossible. Humans were primitive. They lacked the resources, the technology, the sophistication for such a thing. And yet, there it was. In the halls of the Council, there was a moment of uncertainty. And in that moment, for the first time in 10,000 years, the Council was afraid. The Verith enforcement vessel that had taken the children was 3 weeks out from the Council's primary station when sensors detected the incoming threat. The crew, if a crew of crystalline organisms coordinating without language could be called that, did not recognize the ships. They were not in any database, not in any record, not in any intelligence file that the Council's vast archives possessed. They should have been afraid. They were not, or rather, they were not afraid in any way that paralyzed them. Fear to a Verith was simply data to be processed, a calculation to be made. And the calculation was simple. They possessed superior numbers, superior firepower, superior shields. Even this ancient monstrosity could be destroyed. The Verith vessel did not attempt to flee. Instead, it moved to intercept. The Galactic Council did not negotiate with pirates or rebels. It destroyed them, as they would destroy these new arrivals. Retribution and her sister ships did not hail them. There was no warning, no diplomatic channel, no opportunity for surrender. There was simply a light in the darkness, and the Verith vessel was there. Then there was a pressure wave of such immense force that it folded the ship inward like paper. The Verith crew, at the moment of death, likely did not understand what had happened. They did not have time to process the weapon system that had simply reached out across space and reduced their vessel to glowing debris. It was not how modern warfare was conducted. It was how ancient humanity conducted it. The debris fell toward the Council's primary station, and warnings screamed across every channel. An attack. A direct attack on Council space. By whom? By what authority? Dr. Sarah Chun, broadcasting from Keeper's Rest, answered the question. Her face appeared on Council channels, and the message was simple. I am Dr. Sarah Chun, representative of the human species. My colony was attacked. My people were murdered. A child was killed. Specifically, a child named Maya, age 8. Your enforcement construct ended her life for the crime of being afraid. Under human law, ancient human law, written before your council even existed, this is a capital offense. We are here to collect justice. There was a pause in the broadcast. In that pause, you could hear the red sun of keepers rest in the background, burning quietly. Surrender the children. Surrender those responsible for the attack. Surrender to immediate accountability, and we will allow your council to continue existing. Refuse, and we will dismantle every station, every ship, every instrument of your authority until those responsible face judgment. The channel closed, and for the first time in 10,000 years, the Galactic Council faced an enemy it could not negotiate with, could not manipulate, and could not defeat. Not because the Deathworld Fleet was stronger than all of them combined, though it likely was, but because humanity had learned an ancient lesson that the galaxy had since forgotten. Sometimes, there is no solution except to be more terrible than those who threaten you. The Verith, the Keshan Collective, the Solken Dominion all rushed to mobilize. They brought their fleets toward the Deathworld vessels, convinced that numbers and modern tactics could prevail. They were wrong. The battles were not fights in any sense that modern strategists would recognize. They were executions. Retribution's weapons reached across space with a grace and precision that left observers stunned. It was as though the ancient ship knew, with perfect clarity, exactly what to do. Not to wound, not to intimidate, but to end. In the first engagement, a combined force of 17 modern warships advanced on Retribution. 17 ships converged from all vectors, their weapons firing in perfect coordination. The Keshan Collective's hive mind had calculated the optimal approach. The Verith had committed their best command vessel. Even the Solken Dominion, despite their ancient military doctrine, had updated their tactics for this encounter. All 17 opened fire simultaneously, and then all 17 exploded. Not in sequence, not one after another, all at once, as though Retribution had simply reached out and erased them from existence the moment their weapons discharged. The ancient ship did not accelerate into a counterattack. It did not pursue the survivors. It simply moved toward the Council's primary station, and everything in its path ceased to exist. One of the Verith commanders, watching from a distance as their military might crumbled against something that should not have existed, finally activated a communication protocol. They reached out to the Council leadership directly. "We request immediate surrender," the commander said. There was a pause, perhaps the first moment of genuine shock in the Verith's crystalline consciousness. There is no honor in surrendering to barbarians, to primitives. "You are correct," the Verith commander replied. "There is no honor, but there is survival. Honor will not matter if we are extinct." For the first time in the Council's 10,000-year existence, they considered surrender. The human demand was not for the Council's dissolution. Surprisingly, it was not for reparations or territorial concessions or any of the things that typically motivated conquest. What humanity demanded was something far more profound: accountability. The enforcement construct that had killed Maya was retrieved from storage. The Verith commander who had issued the order was produced. The council representatives who had approved the regulation that created the justification for the attack were brought forward. And on a neutral station, with representatives from every major species watching, a trial was conducted. It was not a trial in any modern sense. There were no lawyers, no appeals, no lengthy discussions of precedent or legality. These things had been constructed by the council to serve the council, and humanity had no interest in them. Instead, there was something older. A human judge, Dr. Sarah Chun herself, chosen from her people, stood before the assembled parties. "You have taken a child," she said simply. "Not in defense of your lives, not in resistance to attack. You took her because you could, and because you believed that her life mattered less than your convenience. In human law, ancient law, this is a crime beyond measure. The sentence is death. However, execution of the Varith commander would serve no purpose other than revenge. Therefore, you will instead serve a different sentence. You will live knowing what you have done, knowing that you are the reason your civilization was humbled, and knowing that every day of your remaining life will be a reminder that power without accountability breeds only destruction. The commander was imprisoned. The enforcement construct was dismantled and its components scattered across the galaxy as a message. And the Council, stunned and terrified, faced a new reality. The Deathworld Fleet did not stay. Within weeks, their purpose accomplished, the ancient ships began the long journey back to Earth. Dr. Chun returned with them, leaving behind a new diplomatic corps, humans from Earth, trained in the protocols of Council space, equipped with the authority of the Deathworld Fleet at their backs. They did not demand positions on the Council. They did not demand tribute. What they did was far more revolutionary. They demanded change, not through force, not through threat, but through something simpler and more powerful. They demanded that the Council recognize that every species, no matter how young, had rights that could not be violated. That power came with responsibility. That the strong had an obligation to protect the weak, not consume them. Most radical of all, they demanded that the galaxy remember something it had forgotten in 10,000 years of orderly power distribution. That there were worse things than chaos. That there were worse things than a young, unpredictable species with dreams of its own. In the months after the Deathworld Fleet returned to Earth, the galaxy transformed. Species that the Council had quietly exploited for centuries found their voices. Worlds that had been stripped for resources began demanding restoration. The carefully balanced power structure that had seemed eternal suddenly appeared fragile and corrupt. Some species resisted. The Solken Dominion, proud and ancient, refused to acknowledge human authority and was met with a simple message: "We will be watching." They scaled back their expansions anyway. The Keshan collective adapted, as collectives do, deciding that cooperation with humanity would be more efficient than resistance. The Varith, shaken to their crystalline core, began to understand something new: that the universe was not a hierarchy to be managed. It was an ecosystem that required balance. In the years that followed, the galaxy learned to see humanity differently. Not as a resource to be managed, but as a species with its own terrible power. Not as primitives to be guided, but as beings with a capacity for judgment that made even ancient civilizations seem young. What most of the galaxy never fully understood was this: the Deathworld Fleet had not risen for conquest. It had not risen to dominate or control. It had risen because a child was murdered, and humanity had decided that such things could not be tolerated. A scientist studying the ancient records of pre-Council humanity once asked a human diplomat, "Why did you build such terrible weapons? Your species had just developed FTL travel. You had so much potential, and you wasted it building instruments of destruction." The human diplomat, a descendant of Dr. Chan, smiled sadly. "We didn't build them because we wanted to dominate," she said. "We built them because we had learned a terrible lesson. The galaxy was not safe. So we built them to protect ourselves, to protect our children, to ensure that never again would we be at the mercy of forces beyond our control. When we made peace with the Council, we thought we didn't need them anymore. We thought the galaxy had grown beyond such things." She paused, looking out at the stars. "We were wrong, and when the galaxy reminded us that it hadn't changed, that it was still hungry and cruel and willing to prey on the weak, we remembered who we were. We remembered that sometimes the only way to protect the innocent is to become something terrifying. And we accepted that burden." In the records of that conversation, the Varith historian noted something that they had never before associated with humanity: dignity. The Deathworld Fleet would remain in orbit around Earth for the rest of human history, not as a threat but as a reminder, a promise to anyone who might threaten humanity's children. They had tried to manage fire without respect. Now the galaxy understood. Fire does not accept management. And so the galaxy learned a lesson that it had forgotten in 10,000 years of ordered civilization. In the depths of space, where no one was watching and no one could help, there still existed a species that would burn worlds to protect a single child. That species was called human. For 10,000 years, the galaxy had thought of them as primitives, young, weak, easily managed. They had not understood what lay dormant beneath the ice. They had not recognized that the strength of humanity did not come from weapons or numbers or technical superiority. It came from something older, something that the galaxy had long since forgotten. It came from love, a mother calling a child running toward safety, an administrator weeping over a small broken body, a scientist broadcasting across the stars the names of the dead. This was what the Galactic Council had miscalculated. They had thought humans were sheep. They had not realized that sheep do not build Deathworld fleets. They had not understood that the greatest weapons in the galaxy are not instruments of conquest or control. They are instruments of protection. And for the first time, the galaxy understood what it truly meant to be human. If this story moved you, if you felt the weight of humanity's burden and the grace of its protection, subscribe to this channel for more tales of human courage from the stars. Share your thoughts in the comments. What would you do to protect those you love? We'll be back soon with more stories. Until then, remember, in the darkest depths of space, humanity remains, and we do not forget our own.